Hello everyone, welcome to the Timeform weekend preview, looking in particular and principally at Haydock and the Spring Cup, but a few more big races besides and a few more other bets and highlight horses besides as well. But we'll start with the Spring Cup at Haydock. And is this a case of history repeating? It's soft ground, we've got Harry Angel and we've got a short price favourite because Harry Angel, on every metric, whether it's time figures or bear ratings, or actually compiling a CV, he's the best horse in the race. We know that. We saw how sparkling he was last year. So what's different in 2018 compared to 2017? Well, the big thing with him is that the last time we saw him, he got really upset in his stalls. He had that injury. And he seemed to be affected in both mind and body because he's been given quite a while off to recover from that, sidestep the July Cup, and aimed at defending his Haydock Park Spring Cup title. Easier said than done though, with Harry Angel in particular, to get him to peak for a specific race after an absence, because this is a horse who, he's got that inbuilt, innate keenness and exuberance which sometimes can spill over and affect his performance. On his good days, he's hard to beat, impossible to beat, given the opposition he's up against here. But the fact he's been absent since Royal Ascot, and the fact that he does walk that line, he's always on the brink temperamentally of going too fast and going too headstrong and being too active and alert to give himself a chance to express his ability in full. And that's a question mark for him, given that he's had that time out and he's had to be built up towards this. We're also dealing in a short price favourite, around about 5-4. So the differences from last year to this is that Harry Angel is coming in cold, whereas last year he was coming in hot. And the nuances around getting this horse ready for a specific target means that, to me, it's odds against that he's going to run to his brilliant best under these circumstances after that break tomorrow. In which case, we've got an open Haydock Park Spring Cup, because if Harry Angel doesn't produce his A game, then we've got several would-be contenders who aren't that far behind him, either in historical terms or in ratings terms. We must talk about the Tin Man, who's got an actual track record in this race, twice placed before. But I suppose that if you were looking for longer shots to have a dart at, if you were that way inclined to try and get Harry Angel beat, then Tazleet is certainly one to have on side. This is a horse who hasn't been seen since the early part of the season over in Ireland, but he goes really well when fresh, and he goes really well in testing ground, as he's proved several times over, including when chasing home Harry Angel, albeit a good distance behind him in this race last year. Jim Crowley has chosen Eqtidar, which I think probably adds a few more points onto the price of Tazleet. But Tazleet has at least got that track record and he does relish the ground. He, like Harry Angel, is coming in off an absence, but I think it's probably more by design than necessity with him, because how well he goes when he's fresh. The other one at a massive price, and again, it's just one of those to play in the place markets, or perhaps in a without the favourite betting such as there is out there now. There's more than one way to skin a cat. Don Juan Triumphant. I mean, he's amongst the outsiders of the field, but probably many of you will have seen the ground at Haydock today. Haydock is not just soft ground, it gets Haydock ground. It is really, really gruelling and testing there today. And Don Juan Triumphant, the only time he's experienced this sort of Haydock ground before was when he won the rearranged Ayr Gold Cup at Haydock when it was transferred because Ayr was abandoned. It was nearly abandoned at Haydock because the ground was that bad, as was the weather, but Don Juan Triumphant won that, and he won it through his ability to handle really testing conditions. So Don Juan Triumphant is one of those horses who you'd never think that he could win a Group 1, but the same was said of Here Comes When in last year's Sussex Stakes for the same stable of Andrew Balding, and he's just the sort of horse who might pick 1 off, 2 off, 3 off and find his way into the frame because he loves these conditions so much. So in summary, I sort of really hope that Harry Angel wins because he is a sprinting superstar at his best. But given the circumstances around his return to action, I'd be wary about him producing his brilliant best. Tazleet is a solid option against him, and Don Juan Triumphant is a speculative outsider to hit the places at a big price. The rest of Haydock, it's hard to go into it because, mentioned the ground, it's really testing, and some of the other races that are going to be showcased tomorrow, we're either dealing in lightly raced or young horses who haven't experienced this ground, and therefore it's hard to know how they'll react to it. I'm thinking about the Ascendant Stakes, where Beatbox looks a really promising horse, but who knows whether it'll be as effective on this ground. We have got another race to talk about though, where we're on a bit firmer ground, at least in terms of what the horses can and can't do, in terms of the conditions and the requirements. And that's the Superior Mile. Interesting point here regards the favourite, Regal Reality. Can you remember him at Goodwood? The lightly racer Michael Stout horse who picked off those two headlong, headstrong front runners late in the piece at Goodwood. Now he won on his debut at Yarmouth on soft ground, but he's on soft ground in very different company at Haydock tomorrow, and that race went perfectly for him at Goodwood. And he's just one of those prime examples of a horse whose position in the market doesn't quite tie up to his position in the ratings. If you look at the Timeform ratings, he's closer to the bottom than the top. Yes, he's the one with all the potential, but I just worry about Regal Reality on this ground at that price. That's the key point with him, at the price. And I mentioned Don Juan Triumphant in conjunction with the Haydock Park Spring Cup. Well, on his reappearance, he got absolutely battered sideways by a horse called Emmaus. And Emmaus was on heavy ground for the first time. We know how Don Juan Triumphant relishes heavy ground, well, so too does Emmaus. And I think that this horse is in his element under these conditions. And a 3-1 second favourite, I'd much rather be with him than Regal Reality under these specific conditions, because the ground makes it very much a home fixture for Roger Varian's horse. And he ran perfectly well winning fourth in a Group 3 in France the other day. But these conditions seem to bring out the very best in him. And I'd rather be with Emmaus at 3-1 than Regal Reality at a shorter price under these conditions. I think that nearer the time, those two horses are going to come closer together in the market. Must go to Kempton, talk about this spectacular battle which we didn't really expect was going to happen. Mostly with group races through the season, you sort of know the make and shape of them from the 5-day field, and even from what trainers say beforehand about plotting a path to certain races. And I think that John Gosden announced so early that this was going to be Enable's comeback in the hope and thought that it would scare most of the opposition off. That's been the case. But Sir Michael Stout has said, hang on a minute, I've got Crystal Ocean here. If it's the perfect way into the arc for Enable, then it suits me well with Crystal Ocean, because it's obviously all weather, it fits in well from a time perspective, so he's not going to have the guts dragged out of him ahead of his big targets later on. And it's quite a simple case of arithmetic. Yes, Enable does get £8. That's a lot of weight off Crystal Ocean, because Crystal Ocean has a £5 penalty for his win in the Hardwick, on top of which Enable's got that £3 fillies allowance. So £8 is a lot. But hang on a minute, we know that Crystal Ocean is a proper 130 plus horse, because he proved that point in the King George when he was clear of the rest with his stablemate Port's Word. So if Crystal Ocean runs to 130 plus, like we know that he can, then Enable's going to have to still run to mid-120s in order to beat him. And the chances of a horse running to mid-120s, A, after an enforced long absence such as she's got, and B, when it's not the primary objective, because it's just a stepping stone for her to defending the arc, I'm quite getting the hots for Crystal Ocean at 7-4, purely in the thought that Enable is not going to need or want a really gruelling race. And up against Crystal Ocean, if he sets sail around that home turn at Kempton, much like he did at Ascot, then Enable's going to have to dig deep, really deep, into her reserves first time out in order to catch Crystal Ocean. So I suppose two ways you could do this is to back Crystal Ocean for the race itself, and maybe back Enable for the Arc de Triomphe right now, because if she beats Crystal Ocean, then that's a huge tick in her box ahead of the Arc and going to defend it. And even if she finishes second to Crystal Ocean, that doesn't deter from her Arc prospects whatsoever, because it's unusual to go up against such a high and mighty opponent as him in the September Stakes. It's a thrilling battle, that, and one which will tell us a lot about the defining championship events in the autumn. Sticking with Kempton briefly, we've got the London Mile final. There's a horse in there who's about 3-1 favourite, and it's a really competitive race. But Honeyman does stand out. He's a 3-year-old for Simon Crisford, ridden by D'Souza. He's a classic improver. And I think he's got the perfect strategy and stall to make sure that he's got a really good chance there. But the market tells you that. There is one horse I want to bring to your attention for the London Series final, and that's a horse called Gossiping. Long time since he won, and he's a tricky customer. But the handicap has taken a real chance with Gossiping in the thinking that Gossiping is a turf horse more than an all-weather horse. That's not necessarily the case. Gossiping was beaten 2.5 lengths at Glorious Goodwood in a good handicap there, despite meeting all the trouble going. That was off a mark of 90. Because of that lower all-weather mark, he got to run off 83 the other day on all-weather, and for some reason, just for a change of tactics, change of plan, they were forceful on him, rode him from the front, and that just doesn't suit Gossiping. He's best when he's weaving through. He faded that day, but the upshot is, he's now on a mark of 80, which is £10 lower than when he would have gone very close at Goodwood 2 starts back. And he's got a new jockey on for the first time tomorrow. Shane Kelly is usually his pilot, but Stevie Donohoe gets the call up. Something like that might just click and stimulate a tricky horse. And just at a bigger price, Gossiping was well worth flagging up to you at home as a horse who could easily be backed in the morning and could easily be thereabouts in the finish. Finally, because I've sort of not been very pointed in terms of good bets here and there, I think there is a good bet running at Ascot in the 320. I say it's a good bet. No prices as yet at this stage as we chat here at about 4:15 on the Friday. No prices for the fillies handicap over a mile, which is the 320 at Ascot. But it's a good opportunity for me to say what sort of price I think Shaker Raker could be. This is the horse in question, Shaker Raker, for Roger Varian. Now, you get to identify well-handicapped horses by comparing the BHA rating to the Timeform rating. Shaker Raker is running in a handicap of 88. Her Timeform rating is 100p. Now, normally, the scale is slightly high with Timeform, so it is slightly higher. But that relationship tells us, and should tell you, that this is an extremely well-handicapped horse. And I'm thinking about her reappearance at Newmarket when she won. She won by 3 lengths and 6 lengths, and the horse who was beaten in 6 lengths was Made Up, who's now rated 111, that Andrew Balding improver who goes from strength to strength this year. The strength of that form makes Shaker Raker look really well in off a mark of just 88. She was beaten a few months ago on a second start, but that was a 4-runner tactical affair, which just didn't get to the bottom of her at all. This bigger field handicap at Ascot is going to play much more to her strengths. And I mentioned about the price. Well, I think that if Shaker Raker is 7-2, or bigger, then it's certainly time to get out the betting boots, because this is one of the best handicapped 3-year-olds around according to the Timeform figures, and this is the perfect playground for her. This sort of trip and this sort of track should allow her to really show up well, and if she does what I think is within her, then she's going to be too good even for a hot field of improvers themselves. So I'm thinking about 7-2 for Shaker Raker. If she's that price or bigger, I'm certainly going to get involved. But that's a quick rundown of the weekend. Next weekend, it's a St. Ledger. Someone better will be sat here talking to you about Doncaster next week. But for now, enjoy the racing, enjoy the sport, and someone will be back next week.